Wow, coming out of WandaVision and going into Falcon the Winter Soldier, I got genre whiplash. I mean, it's such a different world. We go from a sexy mystery soap opera to a Tom Clancy type of political thriller expanded with Oliver Stone style exploration of the pros and cons of military life. Don't worry, it's very good. I mean, it sounds actually really good, right? But it just takes some getting used to. Like, it's very disorienting when the show starts because we've been in WandaVision mode. But now it's time for Falcon and Winter Soldier mode. Now, where the two shows are the same, interestingly enough, is the viewing experience. Now, the Mandalorian episodes were short too. I mean, we were promised longer episodes for Falcon and Winter Soldier, and who knows, maybe we'll get there. There's only 6 this time. We'll talk about that in a moment. But episode 1 of Falcon and Winter Soldier is about 40 minutes of story, and then some credits tacked on. No end credit sequence, at least given to the press. So there, it's all pretty short. It doesn't feel as long as some other shows. But Mando episodes doubled as standalone stories and were much more episodic, perhaps because of Dave Filoni's years of experience doing animation for TV. Like, even though there's a story arc for the entire season, with the Mando episodes, there was always an additional story arc for that episode alone, and it was usually resolved. So you got some feeling of accomplishment and closure when you watched an episode. I mean, they were frustratingly short too sometimes, but it was more satisfying. Now, in the MCU Disney Plus shows, you're watching a 5 to 6 hour movie, but broken up, a piece at a time. So therefore, it's more frustrating. Now, yes, it is very exciting and thrilling. I mean, for WandaVision, that was part of the fun. We would all be so frustrated, and then we'd laugh about it every week. But how long is that sustainable? I also think that it hurts the viewing experience. Now, I know some of you might be like, well, just change your mindset. But it's hard because of these things that I'm pointing out to you. The way the Marvel Disney Plus shows are constructed. For instance, on the first watch, you constantly feel like time is running out because there's only 5 episodes left. So in episode 1, just like when we would watch WandaVision, you'd be like, what are you doing? You don't have time for this. And also, it's alarming. Don't worry, there's no spoilers in this episode, but a few things that aren't spoilers, I have to give you some context, is that, for instance, Sam and Bucky never cross paths in episode 1. And you're like, how have they not met? They only have 5 episodes left, and there's not even a mention of Zemo or Sharon Carter. I mean, you really get concerned that the very valuable time, it's like sand running through an hourglass, slipping through your fingers. You're like, oh my God. And you just feel like the time's not being well utilized. Now, to be fair, there are more MCU larger world references here in episode 1 than there were in the earlier episodes of WandaVision. But they're more thoughtful and poignant than mind-blowing. They're not big conversation starters. You're just kind of like, that's very clever. Now, on that note, sure enough, when you go back and rewatch the episode, so that's good, I guess, right? I mean, when I rewatch it to do notes, and now you know what you're going to get, and so you can really take it in a little bit more, you realize that it's a pretty interesting exploration of Bucky's PTSD and how he's a man out of time. It's an interesting comparison because Steve never really lived in the real world when he was around as an Avenger. I mean, who knows what he's doing? I don't want to talk about it too much. It's great. But anyway, he never lived as a civilian. He was always with the Avengers. But here's Bucky trying to be a civilian, and it's fascinating. And then there's Sam, this is really fascinating. This is great. This is an edgy choice, but I love it. Sam's trying to be a hero to his country and his family, yet in a parallel to Colin Kaepernick, which I really love this, and I didn't even realize it until the second watch. When the show is exploring that when he's not in costume, he discovers that his country doesn't care about him. And he's getting a lot of pushback from his family too. It's really fascinating. It's really good. Both of these parallel discussions are handled very well in the first episode, and we'll get into them in depth in my episode breakdown to see just how good it is. Now, usually when I do a spoiler review, I'm breaking down all the clues and stuff like that, and like the powers and the mystery, but here I'm going to be breaking down a lot of thesis points, so that's like kind of the differences between the two shows so far. Again, on that note, there aren't a lot of Easter eggs in episode 1, but like WandaVision, it's a character study, a deep character study. So you have to be like, okay, let's do it. Episode 1 does end on a pretty darn good cliffhanger, though. But again, what's so interesting about it is the lens through which it's viewed. That's what makes it powerful. And it's an incredibly strong political and social commentary. And Falcon and Winter Soldier doesn't pull any punches commentary-wise. The show is incredibly frank for a Marvel project because Marvel, like Disney, always tries to play nice with everyone. Bob Chapek even said that recently on the shareholder call. He's like, Disney loves everybody. Disney's neutral. Disney's the Switzerland of entertainment. And everyone's like, that's not true. But anyway, the show is also a surprisingly strong reflection of our current political and societal world issues. I know some of you might be like, I don't want that in my Marvel content. Well, maybe you should, especially when it's so well done. I mean, it's really well done, and we'll discuss it in the breakdown. I mean, there are so many, it's surprising how many players are on this stage and how in just in 40 minutes, it's weird. This is how I would describe it. There aren't like so many MCU Easter eggs, but there are so many like real world news Easter eggs. You're like, oh, that's a reference to that real world thing. And oh, that's a reference to that real world thing. That's really cool. And if you're into news and history and, American and world history, it's really interesting. So I wonder how big that audience is. We will find out. Now, the show also doesn't hold back when it comes to action. And of course, that's what everybody's hoping for with this show. However, the opening sequence with Falcon goes on, I'd say, for a smidge longer than it needs to. Because not only are you worried about time for story, you're like, we don't need this much of this. But also, I think that Bucky's action scene seems shorter than it should be. So I would prefer the two action sequences to be balanced out a little bit better. Because while Sam's is impressive, Bucky's, I'm not going to ruin it for you. I can't wait to watch it with you. Bucky's is more interesting in the larger MCU picture. That's all I'll say. However, Falcon's opening action scene, I don't want to undercut this, it's a beauty. And as I've seen some of you notice as well, when I look at the comments in my trailer reactions, there's so much thought gone into how Sam, aka Falcon, handles himself in the field. It's really impressive and a joy to watch. So impressive that I think the real world military will watch this show and be like, man, we need one of those suits. I mean, I've always been like, with Falcon. But this is like when I watched Winter Soldier and finally got the shield. I was like, Cap's shield is amazing. I finally got the Falcon suit. I'm like, that's a great suit. And I mean, to watch Mackie jump in and out of airplanes and weave through them and stuff, I don't want to give anything away. He does a lot more than that. In the sky is like really cool. It's really, really neat. Check out my interview with the director of all 6 episodes, Kerry Skogland, to see that a lot of that was done with practical. So that's really cool. With Anthony Mackie actually doing a lot of his own stunts. And Sebastian Stan. But anyway, one character who has a pretty big role in at least the first episode is Danny Ramirez. And we'll talk about him more in the spoiler breakdown. I'm not going to give away who he's playing. It's a Marvel Comics character, and it's not a wow, but it's that's a very clever idea. I liked it a lot, but I particularly like the actor. Ramirez really stands out. And in fact, over everyone on this show and everyone arguing about who should be the new Captain America, as we know from the trailers, that's not a spoiler, I actually think Ramirez would be the best person to take over for Steve Rogers slash Chris Evans. He really has that Captain America vibe. I really like him a lot. I'm like, hey, I think we found the guy. We'll see how his character progresses. Because again, I've only seen him in one episode. While WandaVision was something we'd never seen before in the MCU, Falcon and Winter Soldier is very much cut from the cloth of the Winter Soldier and Civil War movies. And sometimes it actually felt very much like a Marvel Netflix show, the higher end ones. It really reminded me of that, which was like bittersweet because those shows aren't around anymore. Although we'll see. I told you Daredevil's coming back and Jessica Jones and maybe some other characters, but Jessica Jones and Daredevil are first up. Daredevil definitely. But anyway, at moments the show, even though it does seem sometimes like a Marvel Netflix show, it does soar to the heights, I would say, of a modern streaming show, which, because they're not movies, they're different animals. But it very much can compete with the other top streaming shows of today, thanks to excellent directing by Skogland and top-notch, complex scripting from the writer's room headed up by Malcolm Spellman, who's also the showrunner of the whole show. And also, I want to point out that you have, a person of color as the head writer, and you have a woman as the director. And I think it's really great that you have this diversity behind the camera for a show that's diverse but traditional at the same time. And I think that one of the nice surprises about Falcon and Winter Soldier, and this is really great that Marvel has done this, is that it shows that these groups, what have been in the past been deemed special interest groups, can go and tell any story, and I think tell it really well with complexity. I really like it. I really do like it. I highly recommend Falcon and Winter Soldier, the first episode, but just keep those expectations low in terms of wow and MCU stuff, okay? Just remember our lessons from WandaVision and appreciate these slow character burns. I hope people like the commentary. It's gutsy. And as you know, I always admire gutsy storytelling. So that's my non-spoiler review of Falcon and Winter Soldier. We'll be watching it together live. I'm going to watch it again with you for our regular 3 a.m. watch-alongs every Friday this week when it debuts. And then right after, my spoiler-filled breakdown will be ready to go. So share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.